Well, welcome back to a chat with Anita and Matt. So last week we finished off talking about a webinar that Matt was preparing for, and he had asked some questions about the attendees prior to the event and had gotten some answers back. We were waiting to hear for this week what came out of that webinar. So Matt, I'm looking forward to hearing how this went. Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, Anita, the webinar was great, had just really great participation. The title of it, how I phrase it, was something about alternatives you can use to the high pressure, salesy, dark psychology tactics. So if you put everything that I described about what we're trying to do, it was all framed in the negative, because I was talking about what I called the moldy old, predictable, dark psychology tactics that fail even for the gurus. They're no longer effective. So everything I was doing was kind of in the negative. But I asked folks before the webinar, which is part of the technique that we were talking before, 2 days before the webinar, I asked them a question about what would make the most impact for you on this webinar. What would make your time totally worthwhile to be here? And they responded, and there was tons of comments. And what I did was I parsed out those comments that had something to do with a chat with Anita and Matt, something about why they were here. And I made a whole list of them, but then I carved it up into a very long, probably the world's longest sentence. And it was really interesting. I thought I might share that with everyone.
Yeah, please do. It is interesting.
So I'll pull this over here so I can see it. So when I asked them, why are you here? What would really make this a difference? And people would say, well, I want to find, a tactics that feel better, or have an authentic connection, or, present a professional image. So I took all those comments, there's about 40 some of them, and I just put them into one sentence. So here's the sentence, and I just thought I'd read this to see if this resonated with others. So when I put it all together, it reads like this. You want a hype.
Oh, are you able to share your screen so we can read along with you?
Let me do that. Let me get rid of this here. Yeah, I'll share. Now it's kind of, it's a quick sketch here because I was just going to read this. I didn't know I was going to show it to the world here, but how's that? Can you see that?
We can see it.
Yep. So let me just read along here. So the sentence reads like this. You want a hype-free, different, positive, right, honest, kinder, gentler, intuitive method or technique or tactic or good psychology tactic that is more authentic, natural, graceful, friendly, effective, fulfilling, and that attracts attention, increases my joy and confidence, rather than that. And these are their words I just put into one sentence, rather than the dark marketing strategies and tired old cliches that are pushy, boring, car salesy, waste time, make people disengage, and then make me feel sleazy, slimy, a nuisance that makes everyone sorry they met me, and that will help me to do things the right way, present a more professional image that feels better, delivers the promised results, and make those who listen want more from me, with these kind of results to attract and keep people, create relationships, have meaningful conversations, help people get solutions they need, and build a long-term audience or client base.
Wow.
So there it is, world's longest sentence. And, but it really made me think, because I was, again, framing things in the negative.
Yes.
And this is what they want with their audience, why they were here on that webinar, what they're trying to get out of it, and how they want to present themselves to their own members and students, clients, customers, and prospects. So what do you think? Are we tackling some of these on our weekly episodes here?
I think we are. Of course, we want people to chime in to say what they think. What we can do is put your world's longest sentence into the description or the show notes so people can read it and really digest it and see what they think. I know for myself, I've always tried to frame in the positive as much as possible. The challenge, of course, is that most people have the negative feelings and they know how these tactics make them feel on the negative side. Sleazy, slimy, I think one said car salesy, inauthentic. And it's trying to find positive words that represent those positive feelings, but they're not quite as common. I have heard authentic. I have heard words like heart-centered or soul-centered, but that might not adequately describe for a lot of people what it is they actually want to feel. So for me, the biggest thing, I try to operate as much as I can on the feelings, because that's where we tend to make our decisions. Feelings first, and then we rationalize them. So if I'm going into a conversation with a person and it just doesn't feel right to me, let's say they're trying to sell something to me or I'm trying to sell something to them and it doesn't feel right, the chance of us actually having some sort of positive transaction, whether that's money or, they offer me something for free or I help them out, whatever it is really greatly reduced. So that has been my challenge, coming up with these positive terms and framing everything I do in the positive, but at the same time, trying to reach out to people to say, hey, there's another way to do this. And the only way I've ever found is by using some of those negative terms. So I'm glad to see that there was a nice mix of both in your really long sentence and that it wasn't just all negative or all positive, because I really believe that we need both in order to get people to say, hey, yeah, that's me. I feel like this, or I've had that experience, or this is what I want to stop doing. Oh, I think we've lost your audio, Matt.
Oh, I guess I thought I was doing all the talking on this long sentence. Said shut up for a moment. But there was one part I didn't share with you earlier, is that during the webinar, my host asked the audience their reactions to that. So I did all the training. I was teaching people how to apply these techniques to their webinars to bring in more people and keep people engaged and keep your customers forever. And she stopped in the middle of it and asked folks, well, what's your reactions to this so far? So do you mind if I read you a couple of these?
No, please do. I'm curious to hear them.
There's about 2 pages. I'm just going to grab a few that catch my eye here. But when asked, the people sitting in the audience said that this is a much more comfortable way of doing business. I feel better about this approach than any other I've learned or experienced. Someone said, this is so new to me, but it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be new. And I was like, yeah, that's exactly right. I feel more comfortable with these tactics. This kindler, gentler approach matches my personality, authentic, honest, genuine, like my business is.
Yeah.
That was a great, that was from somebody who does face painting on cruise ships.
Oh, really?
I was like, wow, what a business! What a business! I gotta talk to her some more. And a lot of people said things like, this fella here confirms many of the problems I've had with much of the material that I receive from marketers. There was, I don't know how many, at least 4 psychologists that identified themselves as psychologists who were on the talk, and maybe there were more. But that's what they're saying. Help me serve my clients better. This is a breath of fresh air. I had sworn to avoid doing these things that I perceive as being stupid and annoying, but how to do that. So there's just a lot of folks who were appreciative of pointing this out. And I told them, I said, you're not alone. It feels that way because you're like, why should we use these tactics? The urgency and the scarcity and all the high pressure tactics. It doesn't feel right. And so for a lot of these folks, they were just like, I thought it was just me because I know this isn't how I want to sell to my people. And now you're confirming what I already knew. So I think that was a big takeaway from the webinar itself.
I think it's amazing. What a relief. That's, I think, the one word I would use to summarize those feelings you talked about was relief. That I don't have to either pretend and use methods that I don't like, or that there's another way to do it that does really fit with who they are. And so I think, again, we've talked about this in our previous episodes. It's so hard sometimes when you think there's something wrong with you. And hearing these people respond like this, and you and I doing this show, and I'm positive there's lots of other people doing similar things out there. When you come across them and it's just like this relief, this breath of fresh air, I'm glad I'm not the only one. And now I don't feel like it's just my sales techniques or there's something wrong with me. Maybe there's something wrong with the system instead that I've been using.
Yeah. And it was recognized by professionals, psychologists, in particular, who, when they phrase it, they say, we want to treat people ethically and as caring human beings, not to manipulate. So that was kind of their language, the psychologists. But the non-psychologists were saying the exact same things,
Yes.
genuine, caring. So I think there's just a universal kind of sense that we're here to help people, and we want to help everybody that it can help. And so we need to reach everybody. We need to get attention, and we need them to focus on us. And that's most of our problem. Most of us have that same problem. How do we stand on the mountaintops and shout this to the world? And the gurus will come around and say, well, here's how you do it. You make sure that everybody knows there's not too many of this left, and you got to get it by midnight tonight. And you just put massive pressure on people, and that's how you get them. And we know that's not the right way to do it. It's just not working anymore. The gurus know this as well, that those methods are failing. But the good news is there are alternatives. The same psychology that you can use poorly and use the dark psychology, you could be using good psychology. And what I mean by that is give people what they really want. They want to know that they were heard, that what they said made a difference. They want to know how they compare to others. They want knowledge of results. There's so many things that we want, and the gurus will say, oh, no, it's all driven pressure based. Show them that you're the authority. Show them how many other people bought this. Show them that they'd be a fool not to take this offer, that there's only 5 of them left. They got to get in the door. That's not the way most people want to treat their people, especially that first experience.
I right before we got on this recording today, I received an email from someone I had taken a course from, and there's another product being offered. So I just clicked on the link. I was really curious about it. And the anxiety I felt as it was one of these, again, really long, old school sales pages, hype, 27 testimonials, you gotta grab it now, big red letters. And I just noticed how I felt reading it. So this is somebody that I would gladly work with again. What I got out of the course was absolutely amazing. But this hypey sales letter, it made me feel anxious. I was really surprised. Whereas in the past, I would have, trying to think back what it would have been like reading this, I would have felt a bit overwhelmed, just like I did today. There was just so much coming at me. And it was just this, like, especially with the red letters, like, like right at you there. And I was like, I don't feel comfortable with this. And actually, the product might be something I'd be interested in, but it was so salesy, that sales letter, which I guess is the purpose of it. But we know there are other ways to do this. And so I just closed it down. I'm not interested. I didn't like the approach, and it just really it was off-putting. It was absolutely off-putting for me.
Yeah. And I don't have any data to back this up, but it seems to me that, there's just different, I don't even know if I'd call them categories of people, but there's just different stages in your experience with this. So all the newbies, that would include me about 4 years ago, stepping into this world, and you see this messaging and the headlines and the gotta buy now. And a lot of it's very, it's hard to resist.
It's persuasive.
Very persuasive. But then in comes the regret and the remorse and the questioning your decisions. And then you start to question the person that you bought this from. And then when you see it again and again and again, when you're at that stage, then you start to think, wait a minute, what's going on here? Why are we all using the same tactics? And then when you get further down the road, I think you see it all the time, and you just recognize it for what it is, and you kind of shrug it off. You're like, oh, well, that's just what everybody does. And then maybe there's another stage where I feel like I'm at now, where it's a disgust. I mean, you just see it, and you're like, for some people, you're like, well, maybe they just don't know. Others, I know they know.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
And others are like, I know this isn't the best way to go, but there's no other alternatives.
Yeah.
So I haven't really thought this through, but I mean, I guess that's the kind of folks that I'm looking to reach, those that know this isn't all right, but just don't know that there's another way.
Yeah.
Those that know it's wrong and are going to do it anyway, they're maybe they recognize it's being less effective, but some of these folks, they have such huge numbers. It's like, so what? So I'm only 1% of my audience is responding, where I used to get 5%, but now I have, 500,000 people on my list. So who cares? So,
yeah. Or I was just thinking about this, going back to a point you just made. When you and I first came in on the sort of digital marketing scene and we're landing on these sales pages, they were effective because same thing. I didn't know what I was getting into. I had no idea what my feelings were, my values, my beliefs with all of that. It's taken me several years to get to this point now where I can say, hey, I'm not comfortable with this. This is, over here is what I prefer to do instead. It's been a really interesting journey because I just am, my website's gone live. And as I was going through and creating my own copy on my website, how challenging it was for me to remove that hypey language. And I say remove it because initially when I wrote it, that was how I had always done it in the past. So it was, how do I get away from this? And I think, again, it's a whole big switch in thinking from making sales and making money to actually helping people out and building relationships. So they're vastly different. If I'm looking to build relationships, then I'm not going to use a hypey sales letter like I just saw before I got on the call. I'm going to talk like I would as if we were having a conversation face to face. I'm going to use the same language. I'm going to do the same things. I'm not going to, just meet you and say, well, you know what, you got 5 minutes to decide. And if you don't decide, I'm not, and I'm going to grab this and walk away. We would never do that in person. So there's no doubt that there's some challenges in switching over from that kind of traditional sales copy or marketing strategies over to what we're talking about. And this is, again, what we're trying to do is find out, what are people using that's working? Please share with us, because we would like to build a movement here so that people, can see that there's an alternative and they don't have to wait like we did years in order to find it.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. One last thing I'll share from the webinar was when I asked people for 2 days before the webinar, I asked what would make a big impact on you in this webinar? Why would you attend? And I got 2 messages, 2 bold people that said this, and I'm sure there were more that were thinking it. But one person said, I'm very cynical about a webinar having an impact on my life because I usually tune out after 5 minutes. I hope you will impact me, but I doubt it. And I'm like, wow, doesn't that sound like a lot of us where we go to a webinar and they're just, hey, where's everybody from? And, put something in the comment box, and then they give a big story about themselves. Mm-hmm. You're at webinars 15, 20 minutes into it, and they haven't said anything yet. Like, I'm here to learn. My time is so valuable. I just lost my ear pencil here. And they don't get to it. The second comment was somebody who wrote, I'm invited to many webinars and I'm often disappointed at what I expected and what was delivered are not the same.
Yes.
Are you going to deliver what you said you're going to deliver? That was their comment. And I was like, how many people think the same thing? They see the headline and it's some like copywriting gem that, clickbait sort of thing that drags people in. They're like, wow, that sounds really exciting. And then the presenter doesn't talk it, they go into a sales pitch, or they talk about what they could offer the person, but there's no real training and they didn't really deliver. And so this has to stop, because I've been doing webinars since 2001, and webinar is really a powerful tool to train people.
Yes.
I've done mostly informational webinars, but plenty of sales webinars, but it's a good tool to reach a lot of people. But if people are going to keep ruining it so that people don't want to tune into webinars, this is 2 people, out of many, but I'm sure many of us think the same way. But again, it's using these tactics in your webinars to try to build fake community, to go through the steps, apply all the dark psychology right off the bat. And they're losing the audience. You're there to train you. I mean, they showed up. They said they were going to show up, and they showed up, and most people don't, right? Only 25 to 30% of people who register for your webinar will actually showed up. They took the time. They're there live. It was an inconvenience. Get to the train. Tell them what you know, and give them something that can help them right now. That's my thoughts anyway.
I was just going through a blog article that I wrote. Of course, I can't remember the title right off the top of my head because I had several of them that I was working on just the other day. And I talked about this with a webinar. So same thing, I will put the link below so that you guys can read it. But it was, I was new to online marketing, and I came across this webinar, and it had to be the most, flashy thing I'd ever seen. I wrote along with it. I think it was probably like, I don't know, a little over an hour long, and, hit number 1 if you agree, and, hit yes, and all of this stuff. And I did. I bought the course. And as I was going through the course, the whole thing was he was teaching us exactly his methods to get to where he was at that point in his business. And he had a whole section on webinars. And I the dutiful student that I am, I'm taking my notes, I'm doing what he's doing. And it was only once I created my own webinar based off of his model did I realize exactly that, Matt. I had created an hour's worth of content that actually taught nothing. It was smoke and mirrors the entire time. And I reflected back and went, oh my God, that webinar that I watched with him was the same. There was no substance. I learned nothing. And yet, $2,000 later, I'm sitting in his course and going, this guy is a shyster. He scammed us all. And once I was in his course, yes, there was some good content, but there was a whole bunch of stuff I realized he really didn't know what he was talking about. And so I've since, removed myself from his community, but it was a shock to me that even I could create an hour-long webinar coming from, an academic background where all we do is present material and to help people out and to teach. And yet I created an hour-long one that had nothing of substance.
Yeah. Yeah, that's such a shame. And I know folks listening have had the same experience where they regret buying these products. But, it's hard to resist.
Yeah.
Folks who sell well are always going to sell well, and there's a reason for it. But I think the tide's turning. I think people are a little tired of wasting their money in treating people the way that the gurus say we should treat them. Most of these gurus, this is just a game. This is just a game. How many conversions can you get? How many people you bring in your funnel? How do you set up a funnel so you can keep more folks? They're looking at the numbers. It's a game. And to many of us, this is not a game. This is why we're put on this earth, was to help people. We have a specific method or technique or solution based on our own experience and knowledge and the gifts that we have. And we're here to help people in this area. And it's up for some of us, it takes a while to discover what that is and what we know best. But now that we know, we want to share this with the world. And how do you help as many people? It's just so hard competing with folks who treat this like a game. And
I think, though, that might be the difference, Matt, is, again, perhaps they are focusing more on people who are new to the online world or digital marketing and have no reference point. I mean, you and I talked about this in one of our other episodes. I believe it was the first one, where we took all of our years of critical thinking and all of our knowledge we had amassed working in academia and just pitched it out the window, listening to these guys talk about digital marketing. So perhaps that is who they're focusing on, whereas the audience you and I are reaching out to are the ones who have been burned, who've sat in a content-less webinar and realized, this is not for me. Like you said, I want to serve, I want to teach, I want to help, I want us to grow. And so those methods don't apply to what I want to do.
Yeah, that's great. Well, that's a great place for me to wrap it up.
Yeah.
Anything that you wanted to add to today's topic?
I don't think so. Just the encouragement again to comment and to start chiming in on different ways that you have taught learned that are comfortable, and all those words that you read earlier, Matt, authentic and caring and open and all of that. Just share with us what you think. Share about what you think about Matt's world's longest sentence there and the content in it. That's really the biggest thing that I want to always wrap up and say, let's get a dialogue going. Let's get a discussion going and start creating some momentum with this.
Yeah, that's right. And for my part, I do teach specific applications of this good psychology. We've been talking about my webinar where I was teaching people how to apply these techniques to their own webinars, but the similar techniques can be applied to your online courses, to your live events, to your membership sites, even to your own messaging. But it's the same theme, how to use good psychology to draw in an audience and keep them forever. That's where my side is how do you retain your best customers forever? And it's using this good psychology. It's not enough just to bring people into your world and then sell them something and then they leave. There's just so much focus on how do I get more people? How do I get more people? And so few people are actually tending to the ones that they have. Of course, everyone attends to like their inner circle and their high ticket customers, but there's so many people that just bought a course or bought your book, and they're kind of like not, in my opinion, just not tended to very well.
Yes.
Until they're kind of moved along into the higher price products. But how do you keep those people in your orbit forever? And that's the sort of stuff I like to teach. So I'll put something about that down in the show notes here as well, if you're interested in those particular types of ways of getting your message out.
That sounds fantastic. So thank you very much, Matt, for sharing those results of that webinar. I think it really illustrates we're not alone in this, and that there's a lot of us who feel this way. So you can reach me at anitatoth.ca. Matt, where can they reach you?
Best is, I'll put something in the show notes. Sidewayssurvey.com is, kind of my general site. They can reach me by email is best. Actually, LinkedIn is probably spending most of my time. I was just going to
say, yeah.
So you can just
on LinkedIn, same with me.
Yep. So look for that. We'll put that in the link. Just look up Matt Champagne on LinkedIn. Let's connect there. And that's a great way because now I can see what your business is about and read about you. And to me, that's the best way to start, is just kind of get that sense first. So connect with me on LinkedIn. That'd be the place to go.
That sounds great. So this is it, a chat with Anita and Matt, and we look forward to seeing you in our next episode. Take care. Bye for now.
See you soon.